Hi, everyone. Welcome to our channel. Douglas Macgregor asserts that the situation is greater than perceived. He believes that a deal could have been reached in the initial 60 days, preserving much of what we currently identify as Ukraine. Macgregor anticipates Putin explicitly stating that cities like Kharkiv, Odessa, and a significant portion of eastern Ukraine do not belong to Russia. He predicts a substantial territorial exchange where Moscow dictates the number of troops Ukraine can mobilize, their deployment locations, and their access to weaponry. Moreover, Macgregor emphasizes the likelihood of a Moscow-appointed representative in Kiev who holds veto power over Ukrainian decisions concerning trade, commerce, or military matters. Well, he believes there's a deadlock. The Ukrainian government and the proxy force established in Ukraine to confront Russia have suffered defeat. Ukraine lies in ruins, its nation essentially shattered. The death toll from the war is estimated between 450,000 and 500,000 individuals, with numerous Ukrainian soldiers killed and many more wounded permanently incapacitated. Currently, negotiations are underway in a town known as Debaltsev, located in eastern Ukraine, beyond the upper river, where thousands of Ukrainian troops confront a Russian force. Talks revolve around the potential mass surrender of these Ukrainian troops to the Russians. He insists that this war should have ended long ago, highlighting how it has been perpetuated at the expense of the Ukrainian populace. He doubts that Americans comprehended much about the conflict or paid it significant attention. He acknowledges the fortune that the Russians have contained the fighting to eastern Ukraine, clarifying that there was never any intention on Russia's part to invade Eastern Europe. He emphasizes that the Russians desire an end to the war, but the challenge lies in terminating it without appearing absurd. He describes the chaos in Washington and London, where officials attempt to portray optimism despite the grim reality in Ukraine. The Russians have presented a set of demands, causing consternation among White House officials who are unsure how to respond. He asserts that neither the United States nor NATO wields influence over events in eastern Ukraine anymore, suggesting that NATO's future is precarious. He laments the catastrophic underestimation of the Russians and the failure to comprehend their actions, stressing that attempts to isolate them proved futile. He acknowledges the challenges faced by the proxy force, emphasizing the difficulty of building armies from scratch in a short time frame. He concludes that the focus of the American people is now shifting to the Middle East, characterizing the situation in Ukraine as a new unfolding disaster in which the United States played a part. Well, remember, this region boasts the renowned Black Earth. A friend of mine, who resided in eastern Ukraine for an extended period, attested to its richness. He claimed that merely inserting a stick into the ground would yield growth. This soil, 15 to 20 f thick, is among the most fertile on the planet. During World War II, the Germans transported this fertile earth back to Germany in boxcars. It's tragic, but yes, Wall Street will likely capitalize on this opportunity. Blackstone's involvement is just the beginning. As for the rebuilding effort, it's uncertain the extent of the damage is considerable. Any investment hinges on securing an agreement with the Russians, which necessitates a neutral and demilitarized Ukraine. That's the likely scenario. The nature of the forthcoming government remains unclear, but it's probable that Russia will appoint someone to the National Security Council to safeguard its interests. Now, regarding the purpose and objectives, these are critical considerations often overlooked in military terms. We analyze purpose, method, and end state. What's the achievable objective? The intent to harm Russia lacks clarity and justification. Since the mid-1990s, Russia hasn't been viewed as a U.S. adversaries. Sacrificing lives and destabilizing Ukraine's economy and infrastructure without a coherent end state is nonsensical. The notion of defeating Russia and removing Putin is absurd. The problem lies in our unrealistic perception of American indispensability and infallibility. We've created chaos in Ukraine, and NATO's future appears uncertain. It's doubtful that much of it will survive intact. No. He believes the situation is far more dire, emphasizing that a deal could have been struck within the initial 60 days, preserving much of Ukraine as it stands today. Putin's intentions were simply to secure equal rights for Russians under Ukrainian law and halt what he perceived as oppressive policies emanating from Kiev. He proposed neutrality for Ukraine, urging it to refrain from NATO involvement and avoid transforming into a hostile power projection base against Russia. He anticipates Putin making it unequivocally clear that cities like Kharkiv, Odessa, and much of eastern Ukraine do not belong to Russia, likely resulting in a significant territorial exchange. But furthermore, neutrality dictated by Russia would specify the number and deployment of Ukrainian troops and restrict their access to certain weaponry. Moscow would also wield influence over Ukrainian decision-making processes, including matters of trade, commerce, and military affairs. He suggests the need to grasp several fundamental aspects. Firstly, there exists a revolution in military affairs, primarily characterized by the integration of platforms for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance with precision strike systems. This allows for the rapid neutralization or destruction of opponents. However, this paradigm shift has not been adequately acknowledged, with military strategies still rooted in outdated World War II paradigms. He stresses the importance of integrating ground forces within this new framework to effectively exploit and move under the protection of advanced airstrike complexes. He notes that the Russian military was among the first to recognize and utilize this approach effectively, but despite possessing the technology to implement these strategies, bureaucratic hurdles within the military prevent unified efforts across service lines, leading to inefficiency and financial strain. But he contends that our approach needs careful consideration. Attempting to replicate past wars is futile as modern warfare dynamics have evolved. The days of moving vast armies across open oceans akin to Desert Storm are over. Submarines, overhead surveillance, and long-range precision strikes render such strategies obsolete. Building forces based on outdated paradigms is a recipe for failure. He questions the relevance of large surface fleets centered around aircraft carrier battle groups. While aircraft carriers are impressive, their utility diminishes due to their inability to remain hidden. The notion of giant surface fleets in outdated paradigms, akin to the Midway paradigm from World War II, is outdated and impractical. The key question is, what type of force is necessary in contemporary warfare? Moreover, he highlights the neglect of hemisphere defense, emphasizing the importance of securing borders, ports, and airports. He warns that the real threat to the United States emanates from within the Western Hemisphere, not from traditional geopolitical rivals. The porous borders and lack of security measures pose a significant risk to national security. He acknowledges the concerns about the potential economic downturn predicted by various analysts. The prospect of a deep recession or depression raises questions about how to address unemployment and support those affected. He agrees that this is a critical issue that requires urgent attention. He critiques the effectiveness of the deployed forces, asserting that they failed to create any significant deterrence. Rather, they remain idle, consuming resources without yielding tangible results. He suggests that populations in Eastern Europe might prefer the withdrawal of these forces. Moreover, he points out the substantial commitment of assets, at sea and in the air, to Europe, emphasizing the considerable financial costs associated with such deployments. Regarding Israel, he acknowledges the absence of a formal treaty alliance, but highlights the strong commitment from the U.S. Congress to support Israel. Naval assets are allocated to the region due to limited ground forces available for deployment. However, he questions the effectiveness of aircraft carriers in sustaining high sortie rates and expresses concerns about the readiness and replenishment capabilities of the Navy's surface fleet. He emphasizes the critical role of submarines in the nation's defense strategy and argues that the current fleet size falls short of optimal levels. He underscores the importance of submarines as a primary asset in the strategic arsenal. He laments the potential for regional conflicts, noting that while Russia may not seek such conflicts, the involvement of other actors such as Turkey could exacerbate tensions. He cautions about the lack of viable ground forces for intervention and the challenges associated with deploying them safely to conflict zones. He observes that Israelis and/or the U.S. have caused significant casualties among Muslim Arabs and civilians, leading to widespread anger in the region. While governments like Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan may not desire conflict, escalating tensions could provoke internal unrest, potentially leading to regime changes favoring more aggressive approaches. He highlights Turkish President Erdogan's strong condemnation of Israeli actions in Gaza, warning against dismissing such statements as implausible, drawing parallels to past misjudgments about Russian capabilities.